Okay, I'm going to be going over my case study and analysis over this company. It was really interesting for me to learn about them considering they're a Fortune 500 company. They still maintain American values, and also just interested to learn on how they outsource and continue to want to outsource in the future. I'm just going to go by question. So for question 1, why do they outsource most component manufacturing but insource the final assembly? What I found is it saves on their labor costs. The cost of manufacturing goes directly to the cost of labor for them, considering the U.S. has the highest cost of labor. But they also still want to have some controls while they control the in-source final assembly to keep the quality of an American-made company, make sure everything's being satisfied on the customer end. For companies that opt for vertical integration 100%, some pros I found to that is organizations has more control over that. The cost is spread over a bigger scale, which in turn can reduce costs for the company. The cons, if they are not prepared to deal with their whole supply chain in that way, it could cause high risk and a high challenge of issues. So it would be one thing to look at if the highs outweigh the lows in that way. For question 2, which manufacturing location offers the greatest cost savings? For me personally, it was Mexico that I found. It is considered offshoring, but is still close enough to the U.S., so it's less transportation cost and less lead times. For example, China on average was around 33 days, and Mexico was significantly smaller than that, which is an important thing to note. They have no tariffs like China does, and just cheaper cost overall, which I will go over in the next slide. And also, one thing I wanted to note is it's more of an opportunity for in-person communication considering they're closer to the U.S. So some findings, the top one is the one at the very end. So for me personally, it saved about $5 million, and China was not even at $1 million. For production costs, you could see Mexico's is continuing to decrease while China's is continuing to steadily increase, which I think is important to note. And then for transportation costs, China's was almost $1 million more expensive than Mexico. They were even more expensive than the U.S., which I thought was interesting as well. And then for the sensitivity analysis, it did make me reconsider my initial recommendation. These were very challenging for me to figure out. So I did look at it in a few different ways. So I considered that Mexico, we would have to have a startup cost of $9.5 million. But again, in the last slide, they already saved us about $8 million. So I would have to think about if that outweighs that. If demand continues to go up, the amount of trucks will have to increase, which would be a problem with both China and Mexico. For China, it's about $190 per unit, 26 units in each truck. So the cost of that would go up. And then for Mexico, the gas prices is going to continue to grow up. And also I wanted to note the wage growth rate in China is also continuing to grow, which I had to consider. So on the left-hand side is the wage growth rate. In Mexico, it is continuing to go down. Not saying that's a great thing, but it would be something to look at for labor cost. And then on the right-hand side, those are tariffs, because more than likely the 5% is going to increase, and then you could just see how that would affect that, which is another thing to include. I did a few more, which will be included in my Excel file. I just wanted to note these. So question 4, what other qualitative factors should he and his team consider when making the manufacturing location recommendation? I would say reputation would be a huge one. Considering the American Factory documentary, I would think about it strongly before choosing one of these. Communication ethics issue, another problem in that documentary. Make sure that both parties can agree on communication and any issues they have. Another thing is the impact on the U.S. facility. They would have to lay off their own workers. depending on which one they chose. The quality of products, everything needs to be consistent across the board. And they would have to critically look at their strategic fit if everything lined up on their supply chain. So overall, I think this was a really interesting case study for me to look at. I definitely still need to work on the sensitivity analysis to help me evaluate more, but it did challenge my thinking on just looking at the information I found. So I did really enjoy this one, and I'm excited for the next one. Thank you.